Hey, what's up guys, Mate from iTech224. The Samsung Galaxy S3 was arguably the best and definitely the most surprising phone of 2012. Samsung came out with a bang and really impressed everyone and sold millions of units. So how do you one-up that? Well, their answer is the Samsung Galaxy S4. It keeps what the S3 did great, but adds on top of it, giving you a lot more features. Starting off with design, the S4 looks very similar to the S3, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's about the same size, but now it's more squared off and gives you a better grip on the device and feels a little bit better in the hand. It's also made out of polycarbonate, which up front gives it a much less premium feel and definitely doesn't feel as good in your hand compared to some aluminum phones out there. But this build gives you some options that you don't really see in phones these days. The major one being that you have a removable back. So you can take that off and remove the battery, which is great, and you also get a micro SD card slot. To a lot of people, that's a must in a phone, and it's really great if you run out of battery just to be able to swap it out. Now up front, you'll see the massive 5-inch AMOLED display, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Above that, you have an array of sensors and your speaker for making phone calls and the front-facing camera. Below that, you have a physical home button, which I appreciate, and the back button and the settings button. Looking on the right side, you have your power button, which is really easy to access, and on the left, you have your volume rockers. Up top, you have your headphone jack and a IR blaster, and on the bottom, you have your micro USB port. Moving around back, you have the 13 megapixel rear-facing camera and flash, and on the bottom you have the one speaker, which is loud when you're listening to it, but is very easy to cover up if you're not careful. Going back to that screen, we have a 5-inch 1080p Super AMOLED display coming in at 441 pixels per inch, which is insane. You're not going to see pixels on this screen no matter how hard you try. And this screen looks unbelievable, and I mean that in the most literal sense. The screen is sharp and the colors are very vivid, but they're just too vivid. Most of the stuff you view on the screen is just completely unrealistic. The colors are too saturated and the white balance is still off. You still get a green or yellow tint, which just seems to ruin any accuracy of the screen. Now, it's not to say the saturation is unwanted. It actually looks quite amazing. But if you're a person who wants accuracy in a screen, this is definitely not the place to go. But I have to say, it does look really great. One kind of major complaint I have about the screen besides the accuracy is that it's extremely hard to view outside. The screen just doesn't get very bright, at least compared to the competitors, and if you pair outdoor viewing with some polarized lenses, this screen is extremely hard to see. Now, I don't want to make this sound like I don't like the screen. I actually like it a lot. I kind of like the oversaturation, and I love how sharp it is. That 1080p is amazing. But those are definitely some things that stood out to me. Now, powering that screen, we have a Snapdragon 600 quad-core processor at 1.9 GHz. You also have 2 GB of RAM and an Adreno 320 processor, and combined, this is a very powerful phone, and it can run most apps no problem. There's a fair noticeable bit of lag, and I'll get to that later, but I don't think that has anything to do with the processor. When you're actually running apps and doing powerful things, it does just fine. One of the most pleasing things about this phone was the battery. It's a 2600 mAh battery, and I found that after a heavy day's use, I still had some charge at the end of the day, which was very nice. I'm talking hours of streaming, occasional video watching, using apps all the time. This was heavy use, and it lasted me all day, no problem, and it really made me happy. Another feature I really loved was called Watch On, and this actually lets you control your TV or your cable box using the built-in IR blaster. It worked extremely well and controlled every aspect of the TV, at least in my case, and the sensitivity on the phone was actually better than the remotes, so it was really a joy to use when I did use it. Now, the thing that impressed me the most was the camera. Up front, we have the front-facing camera, which is 2 megapixels, and that shoots in 1080p. It gives you some great pictures and video, and I was very satisfied with the results, but the real impressive camera is the 13 megapixel sensor on the back. This thing is pretty awesome, and I have to say, in well-lit conditions, it's probably the best camera I've ever used on a phone. The results are extremely crisp and the colors look great. The low light performance is passable, it wasn't the best out there, but if you're taking pictures outdoors in well lit conditions like a lot of people do, this is one of the best cameras out there. 1080p video also looked great, although I do have to say the stabilization was a little wonky and kinda didn't work very well, but that's a small price to pay for the quality you get. Paired up with that great camera, you get some great camera software as well, so they brought a lot of stuff that they had in the Galaxy camera before, and brought it over to the S4, and it's really nice. You get photos like Best Photo and Best Face, which take multiple images and you can choose the best one. You get Sound in Shot, which lets you take a picture and record audio with it. You can make GIFs, you can erase photo bombers, and overall there's just a lot of features that you get with this camera, and it's really awesome. Over on the video side, one of the coolest yet completely useless features, at least in my opinion, is the picture-in-picture shot. What this lets you do is take a video with the front and rear facing camera at the same time. You can resize the box, change the way the box looks, and move it wherever you want on the screen. And if you're recording while you do this, it records the movements for you, and it's really cool. Now going over to the software, we are up to date with Android 4.2 Jelly Bean, which I appreciate a lot. But honestly, it might as well not even be running Android because TouchWiz is overlaid and it takes over literally every single part of the phone. For some, this is great, and to other people, this is what Android actually looks like. They don't even know there's another version out there. But if you appreciate the stock look of Android, this is definitely not the way you want to go. There are some really cool features that Samsung included here. One is called AirView, which actually lets you hover your finger over the screen and it can detect where you are, and it can show you information without actually have to click on the thing. So you can check things before clicking them, and sometimes it could be a lot faster. You also get air gestures, so if you're in the gallery, for instance, you can swipe your hand over the screen and it'll move to the next photo. You have Smart Pause, which pauses a video if you look away. You have Smart Scroll, which allows you to scroll a web page with your eyes. And there's just a ton more features. And for the most part, these features are really cool, but most of the time they just get in the way. They work really well in well-lit situations and if you're holding the phone just right, but if you're in a slightly dark room or you're holding the phone in a weird way, they just simply don't work. I found Smart Pause to be extremely annoying. I would look straight at the screen and it would just pause and start randomly. And at this point, it just seems kind of half-baked. You can only use these features in about 3 apps, and most of the times those apps aren't the best option for Android. So it's nice that they included them, and it definitely impressed some of my friends, but it's not something that I see myself using every day. But that brings me to another issue, which is that this phone was extremely laggy, and that's just not acceptable in a phone of this caliber. Almost everything I did had a noticeable lag to it. For some people this doesn't matter, for others you might not even notice it, but it's definitely there, and it was quite a disappointment, especially for a phone that's supposed to be this high end. To me, it just proved that Samsung is trying to stuff as many features as possible as selling points rather than actually making those features the best they possibly can be. Now granted, some people want that, and if you do, you're going to love this phone, but if you want the best experience possible out of Android, I don't think this is where you're going to get it. So overall, the S4 is a great upgrade from the S3. It took everything that the S3 did great and just added to it. So you still get a similar design and you have a removable back end battery, but you have a much better screen and you have a ton more software features. If I would put this into one sentence, it would be if you like the S3, you're going to love the S4. Samsung still has work to do in optimization, but there's no doubt that they're trying to push the envelope and add as many things as they can, and I appreciate that even if you're not going to use any of it. So that's my review of the Galaxy S4. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe. That would be awesome. Like I said, I'm Matt, and I'll see you guys in my next video. See ya.